so we're gonna do the Ultrapol grinding. One of the things to first do is make sure you have your proper lapper. We're going to be using this 40 micron one, but there's a few other ones. There's the old adhesive style, and then there's a 20 micron there, 1 micron for really fine ones, but I think the 40 would be more than enough. There's some older ones. There's also the other plate down here. One of them has a rough grit that's supposed to be the diamond grit that's supposed to set the ferrule. That's not for grinding your capillary. So surprisingly, you don't need an adhesive. You just got to spray a little bit of water onto that surface, and the back of this guy is kind of good enough. You move it around, it'll stick to it. It's kind of centered, and so now we will turn this guy on. This guy does the whole thing. This is one of the first annoying things. That should start blinking. Rotate this guy all the way up. And then bring it back down. And now it should properly sort of calibrate itself. This is labeled 45 minus. It should be 90 minus. But we'll get to that in a second. So now we've got this guy going. This guy also, we just got it connected. So turn that on. There's no sign in, but it should be able to see the capillary. One of the first things that you want to do though with the capillary is, one, you want to score it at least 150 to 200 millimeters. This is going to be a 50 by 360. So the point of this little block is to give it a nice flat polish. So just load the capillary in either direction. It doesn't matter in this case because we don't have a polished tip. Once you polish the tip, then be more mindful of what direction you're going in. So, but pull it all the way out, because ultimately the side that you're feeding from, you're going to want it to be flat, and we're going to hold it flat against the lapper. Right? Yeah, so it'll be nice and flat. And actually pull it even a little further, so it's going to be tight on the green ferrule. But what we're going to do is we're going to get in there. So the orientation of the light is kind of useful later. It's going to feel in your way, but it's useful when you're going to do the actual polishing. I'll spray for you. In this orientation, we put counterclockwise because you'll see that as the little mandrel rotates, it kind of rotates the debris away, right? But you can do clockwise if you want. Actually, in this case, we're going to want to do clockwise, and you'll feel it. Spray a little bit of water. It's going to spray everywhere. Put that guy down. Keep the peak piece in place, right? Keep it just kind of flat. And then with your other hand, you can move the capillary, and just, you'll feel, you can like pull it away and just maybe tap it down, and this should kind of give you a little flat edge. Right, so you can kind of lift and tap, and maybe you can hear it or not on the audio, but that should be good enough to give you a nice flat profile. You can take it off, and then you can do it to the other side if you really want, but now remember that that's the side you did, right, as you pull this capillary out, right? And so go ahead and take it out. Remember which side is your flat side. And so now we're going to load it on our little brick. So you can take this guy and get rid of him. So now in this case, you should feed it backwards now through this little like alignment ferrule. This guy has a little hole in there. You don't want to put it flat side first, or, you know, polished side, because you might break it. It's weird because it is at an angle, so this little ferrule is intentionally designed to sort of provide pressure against the capillary as it's polishing, and so it's custom made to have that bevel. So feed it all the way back. Eventually you'll feel some resistance because this is the bottom side, but that little gray part meets the brass. But once it comes out the back, keep pulling. You want to leave like maybe a few millimeters exposed. If the capillary is like gross from like glue or something like that, you're gonna struggle here. Okay, that's good enough. Something like that. Can't really focus on it, but that should be good. So now an important thing is tightening that nut in the back, but you notice that it kind of gives. The best way to do it is just grab some hex key, and you see that there's a hex key here, or sorry, a set screw. Just kind of stick this guy in there. It's not the right hex, but use it to counter torque yourself, because if not, this guy will not seal, and then it won't, the motor will rotate. Yeah. You just kind of use that as a pivot point. Yep. So it should be good. So now you should be able to see it on the camera that it is in fact rotating. Okay, so now before you mount it up, this guy's kind of your up and down right here. So for me it feels unintuitive, but this is down, so rotate it up just to kind of make sure that, you know, the last time somebody said it, that's probably good enough. This guy moves. You want to make sure on your dial that you can get to the angle you want. It should probably always read about 73, because it seems like the 17-degree angle, so 90 minus the 73 is going to be ideal. So you really shouldn't have to set this. If you have issues, there's a nut back here that kind of adjusts, and I'll try to twist it and you can see the number. It's fine tuning there, right? So I can really dial in these fine numbers. There's a little counterweight that'll help you move things, right? When you want to get up. And so you're going to want to mount it. You can kind of see here that there's like a little nut and a quick release. So you're going to want to slide this guy in this orientation onto that. You're probably going to want to lift this guy up. And hold it. Yeah, okay. So you should see that now it's kind of sitting still. Now the next things that you want to check is, one, your angle. Make sure that it does get you to 73. In this case, we want a 17-degree polish. So just kind of twist. And you can reset that, but you shouldn't have to futz too much around with it. But there's some mechanism back there, even below, that'll get you to it. The next thing you want to look at is this overhang right here is pretty bad. Right, it's not going to sit on the polish, and you can see here at the side that it's hanging pretty high up over, right? So it's not going to reach it. Probably me forcing things up, mess things around, but yeah, there's a release back here. So go ahead and release it. That's going to release this whole assembly. So be mindful, it will rock forward too. So, you know, kind of hold it tight. You don't want to jam it in. Get it a little close. And then go ahead and lock it. You got to be careful too if you're doing different angles besides all the common settings, because this piece right here, you know, it does hang lower, and so does that, so it can get really close. And for really shallow angles, it could be really tough. The other thing that's going to happen is that this arm back here cycles, and so we can test things out right now. This is plugged in. This gives power to the rotating guy. This is the power for that guy. Yeah, go ahead and hit accessory power. Now they're all powered. This turns it off, for example. And there's one back here for this guy. What you want to look for now is that make sure it stays on the lapper the whole time. It looks like it kind of comes off, but you don't want it to come off. Because if it gets too low, then it'll kind of clip under it. So yeah, give it a little, just a slight rotate. You can also mess with the arm, but you don't necessarily want to do that. It's much easier to sort of just turn this whole tower. So it looks good. As long as it stays on the lapper the whole time, it should be good. Now, the other thing, actually, try to rotate this now so at least we get some glimpse on it on the camera. Because it's moving this camera arm is just kind of a pain. No, the actual tower again. So kind of try to rotate it that way, just to make sure that we can see it show up as up. Okay. It's not always going to be in shot when it's rotating. So what you might want to do now is wait for it to hit a max. And then I'm going to cut the power in the back for the sweep. And now, yeah, we'll try to get it on camera. That looks like it's about the thing, but you're also really high. So lock it there, yeah. And then this, everything is at weird angles. So, you know, as you go down, you might lose your focus and things like that. So this is actually, it's a little far back. This is tape. That's part of the ferrule, or this is tape, this is more ferrule. Yeah, perfect. And you can see it rotating. And so, just kind of set it somewhere. And now, what you want to do, and this is where the light is useful, is start to walk this guy down, right? And then, as you're walking it down, you might have to follow it with the focus of the camera, but what you're really looking for is eventually, if you lose it, maybe scoot it back. It's a little annoying, but once you kind of have this set up, you kind of don't have to do it again. You just putzed around a little too much. Yeah, take a little further back because it's going to keep coming in. So now you keep walking it down, and what you're really trying to see, and I'm adjusting the focus at the same time, not a one-man job, but look at the shadow, and once the shadow and the capillary sort of touch, you probably start to see it, and you'll hear it a little bit too. So stop it there, and then what you want to do is, for your own reference I guess, is take this smaller nut, loosen it, and change your dial and zero it. Lock it back in place. So now this is kind of your reference. And it's supposed to be, each tick is a micron on the dial. What I've been doing for these 50x360s is letting them go down to 150 about, or 150 in those markings. I don't know, the big numbers all of a sudden change from 0 to 1 instead of like 100. But we should see now, you've turned on the motion, but you see this start to look polished already. And I've been taking them in 30 micron steps here. So just do 30 microns, wait a second, I'll splash water on there. You know, just get nice and lubed. One thing that I was doing before was switching the rotation. So you kind of see that this is rotating into the sort of cut. So maybe we'll stop it for a second and rotate the other way. And so now it should hopefully sweep away and not into the hole, just sort of the angle that it is sweeping. It hopefully is always having stuff carried away. So keep walking this down, like by 30 micron steps. And just kind of hold for a second. And over time it'll eventually go. Every so often you'll see this dial go up, you know, like 0.01, because this is spring loaded, and I think it will sort of take, that's why it's counterweighted and all that, so I think it sort of takes and then grinds and falls back to the proper level. That's the Motocam software. When it starts to get really gross like that, you know, it's kind of dry here, just give it another little spritz. Once it meets its shadow and you zero it and walk down 150 microns, it should get you a nice polished tip with a 17-degree-ish angle. And it was pretty repeatable. Just at 150. Let it sit for a second. Give it another little squirt so it's not so gross. Come back in view. Looking very nice. Okay, one more pass, and then once we're done, I think before you turn everything off, crank it upwards a little bit so that, you know, get it to disengage from the lapper. Right, you can hear and you can see on the camera it's going out of view. And now go ahead and you can turn off the accessory so it stops rotating. You can leave this on if you want, or turn that off as well. Middle is off. There's the whole thing. Right? And now you can disconnect it. Right? And then be careful because you got your delicate end. Right? So exactly angle it up a little. Give the quick release, slide it out without knocking things. The cable is long enough that you don't have to disconnect it. And then you can mount it on this terrible guy, and you can give it an inspection if you want on this camera with the dyno light and the separate software. I'm gonna do that. It's a terrible one. It has a quick release here, but not a quick release here. So this face sits against this face. So you kind of have to wedge it in. Yep, and then it sort of checks. Slide that in. See, that guy slides on that rail. And now there's a separate piece of software. This is a touchscreen, so the dyno light one. I think for the capillaries, the light's not good, so there's a little light, a little like sunshine looking thing. Just turn that off. And then, yeah, mess with all these sort of stages so you can get the right view. And that looks very nice. And with this power still connected, if you were to repower the system, you can also rotate it and make sure that you could turn it. No, I think you have to turn the main power. No, everyone, yeah, okay. So now you can see, so now that, so I think we didn't really zero it when we started, so you can see that there's like a little edge, right, as we rotate. And so you can either put it back in the peak block and try to eat some of that away, live with that, depending on what you're doing. This might be more than enough polished. So I think we ate away more than 150. I think we ate like 180 about. And it's a 360 micron capillary. So it makes sense that you should have, you know, very sharp tip at the end if you're eating away the 180. So yeah, that's it. That's your polished capillary. You take it out. You turn this guy off. You can unseat it from here and pull out. Always, now that you have the polished tip, this is an incredibly delicate thing, so really try not to feed things forward.